school or in an athletic career often turn into this type of procrastinator. Take Sarah, for example, a city planner who graduated at the top of her class from Stanford University. Soon after graduation, Sarah joined the planning director's office in a major West Coast city. One of her duties is to generate reports for her boss to use in making important presentations. Sarah has begun putting off doing the reports until the last minute. While she collects the material in time, she finds that she dawdles with the writing process until the night before, or sometimes even the morning of the presentation. She then rushes through the writing and ends up turning out an adequate but far from superlative report. What Sarah manages to do in each case is avoid testing herself to the maximum. She is not certain whether she can live up to the high promise of her success in school. By putting off her work till the last minute, she doesn't have to find out the truth about her abilities, because of course at the last minute nobody could be expected to turn out a perfect report. In the course of this kind of procrastination, Sarah has picked up a new skill called brinksmanship. She flirts with catastrophe by not doing her work in time, then pulls herself out of the brink at the last minute. If her performance doesn't measure up, she can always blame lack of time for failure. When her performance is good, she can applaud her ability to come through in the clutch. All that Sarah is proving is that she can do an adequate job at the last minute. The real test, what she'd do with the report if she took the time to work on it, has never been faced. The second group of procrastinators are afraid of the very thing most people are striving for, success. Some of these people are simply afraid to stand out from the crowd. They don't want to be seen as different. Many are afraid that if they are too successful, they will outgrow marriage partners, families, or friends. These people limit their own performance, actually holding themselves back, because they fear the kind of change success may bring to their lives. The third group of procrastinators is constantly rebelling against authority. These are the people who put off doing their work because it gives them a feeling of control over their boss. Rebellious procrastinators spend their lives reacting to a fear of being controlled or dominated. Whenever something is expected of them, they react by procrastinating just to prove that they are the ones in power. If you're a procrastinator, you probably fall into one of these three groups, or you may find you have a little bit of each type of procrastinator in you. Understanding the reason for your procrastination is your first step towards overcoming it. It's especially important for you to realize how self-destructive and self-defeating procrastination is. Whether you're rebelling against someone or responding to an inner fear, procrastination will eventually hurt you in everything you try to do. There are a number of techniques you can use to help overcome the habit of procrastination and replace it with energetic, efficient, inspired action. William James, the great Harvard University psychologist and philosopher, who already taught us in Session 5 the value of acting as if we are what we want to be, has a very practical solution to procrastination. James suggests, do something every day for no other reason than you would rather not do it at all. Listen again. Do something every day for no other reason than you would rather not do it at all. What James is really telling you to do is to replace the habit of procrastination with the habit of action. As soon as you catch yourself thinking, well, I won't do that now, I'll do it later, you must immediately do whatever it is you're procrastinating about. Self-disciplined achievers also use two special time management techniques to overcome the tendency to procrastinate. The first is called Swiss cheesing. The second is called unscheduling. Swiss cheesing is another term for dividing a macro purpose into a series of micro tasks. The management consultant who invented the term conceived of it as a way of poking holes in a large task to make many smaller tasks. If you have a task that will take 2 hours, Swiss cheesing it creates 8 15-minute segments, or 4 30-minute segments, or however many smaller segments you need to get the task done. Breaking a macro purpose down into micro tasks makes it seem much less formidable. In fact, this one-step-at-a-time approach is the only way to achieve a major goal. Without losing sight of what you want to achieve, you should never go around thinking about the enormity of your major purpose. You must concentrate only on achieving one small step at a time. Unscheduling also helps you to overcome procrastination and get on with your project in the most efficient way possible. Sometimes you know you're going to need so much time to complete a task that you won't even start it. You rationalize that you'll never find the time to finish it anyway. But often people overestimate how much time it really will take them to do something, and they don't realize that by Swiss cheesing, they can find the time to do it in an otherwise busy schedule. Turn to page 45 of your study guide and look at Form 8.1. You'll see a chart with the days of the week listed along the top row, and the hours in a day listed vertically along the left side. There are 7 days listed and 16 hours per day. The chart presumes that you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and retire at 10 p.m., but you can easily change the numbers to correspond to your own daily hours. It's often a shock to look at a chart like this and realize how many hours you actually have available to you in a one-week period. Of course, many of those hours are taken up with the necessities of everyday life. Your first task in this exercise is to fill in all those hours that are occupied with travel, meals, work, meetings, regular recreational activities, and other commitments. Only fill in the time that absolutely must be devoted to activity. If you regularly watch television or read magazines for 3 hours every night, that doesn't qualify as a life necessity unless it's part of your job to do so. When you've finished, look at the boxes you haven't filled in. These represent your free time, time you have full control over and can devote to your own micro-projects. You may be amazed to find that you easily have 20 or 30 hours per week of free time to devote to your project. And if you include time that's spent commuting on a bus or train, the hours may add up to considerably more than that. Once you've ascertained when and where your free time occurs, you can begin allocating that time to your micro-projects. When the hour arrives to start working, remember William James' advice and do it now. Work uninterruptedly during that time, taking scheduled breaks only as necessary. And don't allow yourself to get sidetracked. Working uninterruptedly means learning to say no when people try to take you away from your work. If a friend calls up and asks you to go bowling while you're working, you must learn to refuse. Make a date to go some other night, but complete your working hours in the time you've allotted to them. Let your family know that you're serious about completing your tasks. Schedule time to enjoy being with them, and let them know that when you're working, you are not to be interrupted. After successfully completing each work session, fill in the blank hours on your chart with a special colored pen or pencil. Choose a name for your project and fill in the blanks with that name. It will soon become extremely rewarding for you to look at the chart and see the red or green boxes begin to take up considerable space on the page. More rewarding, you'll begin to see real progress in your effort to complete your micro tasks. As you learn to devote uninterrupted time to your work, you'll find the time-quickening experience begin to occur more and more often, and you'll be less and less inclined to procrastinate. Soon your micro-projects will become as much a part of your life as eating and sleeping. And an excitement will take hold as you begin to realize that, yes, you are working steadily toward your goal. And not only can you really do it, you are really doing it. Be careful not to overcommit yourself in terms of time spent on your project. Your goal is not to exhaust yourself. And beware of trying to go in too many directions at once. That can cause the kind of anxiety that will make you want to give up before you even get started. Concentrate on accomplishing one task at a time. That task will get done, and then you can start on the next, which will also get done, and so on. Keep in mind through all of this that your objective is not to punish yourself with work in every free hour you have during the week. Working towards a macro goal by accomplishing micro tasks should not be an unpleasant experience. By creating a healthy balance between work and recreation, you'll find yourself looking forward to those hours when you can devote yourself to pursuing the goal that will make life truly worthwhile for you. You'll reach a point where you wouldn't trade those hours for anything in the world. You've come a long way in this session. You've learned how to overcome the tendency to procrastinate, how to experience time quickening, and how to learn to value seasoning as inevitable in reaching any goal. We'd like to make one more suggestion to you before ending this session. Put up a sign at your desk, table, or other workspace. A sign in big, bold letters that you can see every time you look up. This sign should say, "Use time or lose time." Let it serve as a constant reminder that time marches on, whether you're working toward your goal or not. And every minute that you are devoting to your micro projects is bringing you just a little bit closer to achieving your life's ambition. In the next session, you'll find out how self-disciplined achievers master the skills and knowledge they need to make their vision a reality. And you'll learn to broaden your own new field of knowledge by overcoming your learning blocks and harnessing your built-in powers of intelligence and discipline. In this session, we're going to talk about how you can identify and learn the knowledge and skills you need to master in order to achieve your vision and purpose. As we've repeated throughout this Neuropsychology of Self-Discipline program, any goal worth achieving takes preparation and careful, patient work. As easy as running is, as natural as it seems, you wouldn't go out today and run a marathon without months of preparation, slowly working up to 3 miles a day, then 7, then 10, then 15, gradually working toward the 26-mile goal. You would start marathon conditioning with a careful program of nutrition, stretching exercises, reading, talking to other runners, and even a doctor's checkup. You'd determine what knowledge and skills you'd need to accomplish your goal of 26 miles, and you'd accumulate the knowledge and skills step by step until your goal was achieved. The goal of this session is to help you learn how to learn. Many of us were programmed years ago with the belief that there are certain things we just cannot learn. We were tracked in school into one path or another because of test results which told us we had no aptitude for a particular subject area, or by teachers or counselors who believed we were best suited for one discipline over another. In some cases, the stereotype was as blatant as girls take home economics, boys take shop. In other cases, the grounds for tracking could have been racial or economic, or some other person's perception of our intelligence. In a now famous psychological study, new teachers in an elementary school were told that certain students in their classes were gifted and certain others were slow. In truth, there was no measurable difference in the student performance up till that time. But by the end of the following semester, the students labeled gifted were doing work above grade level, while the slow students were performing below. The only thing which had changed was the teachers' attitudes toward the children. Much of our response to learning has been based on what we've been told about our ability to learn. In this session, you'll learn how to break through the learning barrier and clear away the mental blocks that have you falsely entrapped in the belief that you can't learn certain difficult subject matter and skills. You'll learn how to learn all over again, this time recognizing that your potential is as unlimited as your imagination. You, like other self-disciplined achievers, will know how and when to acquire the essential knowledge and skills that will enable you to achieve your goals. In our research into human achievement, we found that the world's most persistent and successful people had developed a 4-step approach to learning that ensured they would successfully acquire the knowledge they need to achieve their goals. The process is a simple one. Listen carefully as we go over its basic components. First, they're able to determine what new skills and knowledge they must learn in order to achieve their goals. Second, they call into play their belief in their ability to learn. They believe they can learn any subject or skill, no matter how difficult it might be. Third, they're patient. They understand that acquiring new knowledge and skills is often a slow, step-by-step process that requires systematic trial and effort. No matter how young or how old, the learner must go through the same progression of acquiring knowledge and skills. And fourth, They develop their own effective, personalized system for learning, a simple learning formula they can apply to any subject matter to efficiently and thoroughly master goal-relevant knowledge and skills. Let's delve into each of these steps in turn to see how they can be applied to your own learning efforts. The first step of a learning program to acquire a new skill can be approached much like the planning work we dealt with in Session 7. You can design a similar flow chart with an activity box labeled Start and a box labeled Finish. The intermediate steps are, of course, other activity boxes. Activities which must take place at the same time must appear one above the other. The activities that follow each other in chronological order are listed from left to right. The activity that comes first is to the left of the activity on the right. Any research you have to do, consultations you have to make, background materials you have to accumulate, all are entered on your flowchart in the proper activity boxes. Let's assume for a moment you're just about to begin your first year of college. Your ambition is to become a neurologist. You know that to get into medical school, you have to excel in college pre-medicine. The thought of taking 4 years of math, chemistry, and biology seems pretty intimidating, and becomes even more intimidating when you realize that you have to have almost a straight A average in those subjects to be even considered for medical school admission. The intimidation would quickly go away if you could develop a 4-year visual network plan that outlines specifically what you had to learn and in what order you would have to learn it, year by year. Then, upon viewing the completed network plan, look at it and develop the deep inner belief that you have it in yourself to master each of the subject matter areas. Let's work through a visual network plan for successfully completing college pre-med. Granted, most of you listening to this program won't want to become medical doctors, but this example is applicable to any situation in which new knowledge and skills must be learned. Turn to Diagram 9.1 on pages 48 and 49 of your study guide. I'll pause a few moments while you find Diagram 9.1. As you can see, there are 3 visual network plans. The first one outlines the chronological steps to becoming a neurologist. We call this a macro plan, with the objective of becoming a neurologist. Below that is the micro plan with the objective to graduate in pre-medicine in 4 years with a minimum 3.5 grade point average. The micro plan is broken down into 2 levels. The first level is visually represented in 2 steps. The Start, labeled number 1, and Graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Pre-Med, labeled number 3. This first level has actually been extracted directly from the macro plan. Now look at page 49 and the Level 2 diagram. As you can see, Level 2 is an expanded version of Level 1. Through the study of the college course catalog, and after talking at length with college advisors, you have identified the pre-med requirements and have broken them down into a prerequisite chronological order. This visual network plan then serves as the step-by-step map for completing your pre-med program, the first step in your macro objective of becoming a neurologist. As you look at the visual network plan for completing pre-med, what type of emotions do you experience? Do you feel intimidated at the prospect of excelling in the hard sciences? Do you doubt your ability to learn such difficult subjects and to learn them so well that you finish each course at the top of your class? If you feel intimidated and experience doubt, then you probably won't make it. If you look at the plan and feel deep down inside that with enough effort, study, and application, you can master each of the courses, then you'll probably succeed. The difference, you see, is really not in ability or intelligence. Rather, it is an attitude, your belief in yourself. The belief in yourself as someone who is capable of learning is 90% of the learning hurdle. The other 10% is single-minded application mixed with ability. The belief in yourself as someone who has the ability to learn is the second step involved in the self-disciplined achiever's pursuit of goal-related knowledge and skills. Much of your own belief in yourself as someone who is capable of learning complex material may have been educated right out of you in school for a variety of reasons, some of which we explored at the beginning of this session. One major reason for this belief is a vicious cycle people get caught up in early in their learning experience. Take math, for example. Many people have learning blocks when it comes to math. They feel that they just don't have the aptitude to learn complex mathematical concepts. And they can prove this lack of ability to you from their grades and success in math classes. What most of these people lack is not the aptitude for math, but the application of self-discipline. Math requires progressive learning. You have to master one concept before you can go on to the next. If you miss a few steps in between, then it's really easy to get lost. And once you get lost, it's nearly impossible to catch up. To stay on top in math requires a daily effort of study. Most people who enter math because of their lack of self-discipline think that they can get by with a minimum of effort. Most of these people are intelligent. They can get by in most other courses by just coasting. They think they can do the same thing in math, but soon they get behind and can't catch up, and usually do poorly in the course. Then, after such an experience, they label themselves as poor in math. They carry this label with them throughout their lives. This label shades most of their decision-making when it comes to choosing courses of study and careers. Such people will avoid careers that require mathematical understanding because they think they don't have the aptitude. Actually, they probably had and have the aptitude, but not the attitude. Their life's potential was stunted by a false assumption. All they needed was someone to teach them the value and skill of self-disciplined application. Most of the people we studied in the creation of the Neuropsychology of Self-Discipline program were not extra intelligent, but they did have a firm belief in their ability to learn anything and everything. To them, 90% of their ability to learn was their belief in their ability to learn. If you examine your own positive role models, you'll probably discover that few of them test out at genius level on intelligence tests. Most people think that Albert Einstein, for example, was a mathematical genius, when in actuality he flunked his college entrance exams and was a poor student in mathematics. As a youngster, he envisioned himself one evening riding through space on a beam of light. In his imagination, he sensorially experienced the theory of relativity. He knew what it was, but he was not able to explain it to others in a language they could understand. The only language was mathematics. Driven by his vision, he forced himself to learn mathematics. For Einstein, it was a day-by-day struggle, but he finally developed enough mathematical knowledge to simply express his experience mathematically. Einstein's theory of relativity and its mathematical expression ushered in the age of nuclear energy. Another scientist, whom most people attribute genius, was the inventor of the laser, Dr. Theodore Maiman. While at Stanford University, he flunked his PhD oral exams and had to take them over again. Learning didn't come easy for him. It was a daily, step-by-step struggle. Baseball hitting great and cybervision role model for its baseball neuromuscular training video cassette, Rod Carew, didn't make his high school baseball team because his coach thought he wasn't a good enough hitter. Since then, through thousands of hours of practice, Carew has won 7 American League batting titles and is one of 13 players ever to get more than 3,000 career hits. The list goes on. Famous author, philosopher, and scholar Leon Uris flunked high school English 3 times. Malcolm Forbes, publisher of Forbes magazine, one of the most successful business publications in the world, did not make the staff of his college newspaper. The editor said he lacked the basic skills of reporting and editorial writing. Stephen DeVore, who founded Cybervision, speaks the Finnish language, considered by language experts to be the most difficult language for Western tongues to learn. Though he mastered this difficult language, he lays no claim to a superior intellect either. When I was 19, he told an interviewer, I was selected to go to Finland for 2 years of volunteer work. I had no foreign language ability at that time. In fact, I had nearly flunked out of high school French and Latin. So I thought of myself as having absolutely no ability to learn languages. With this negative attitude, Devore entered an intensive language program for 2 months before he left for Finland. It was something like 16 hours a day with a group of 10 others. I finished last in the group, he recalls. Devore went to Finland, where he spent 5 miserable months unable to communicate. I couldn't do anything. I was incredibly frustrated. I'd lose patience when people were talking. Then one day I went to the park, and in the park there was a man giving instructions to his dog in Finnish. The dog obviously understood him and was obeying all of his commands. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm smarter than a dog. If a dog can understand Finnish, so can I. In the 2 months following this experience, Devore became fluent in the Finnish language. He learned to speak Finnish so well that he served as a translator for American businessmen and their families traveling to Finland. Buoyed by the accomplishment of learning Finnish, Devore returned home after 2 years and went back to college, where before he had been a lackluster C student because he was convinced he couldn't learn. He received straight A's and academic scholarships for the rest of his college and graduate school years. Which proves another point about learning, success, and attitude. Once you have successfully learned a subject or skill, it bolsters your confidence in your ability to learn other skills. Once you've proven to yourself that a negative concept you had was wrong, you begin to realize that all of your negative concepts may be wrong. What you couldn't do in the past, you can now do. You can do it because finally you believe you can do it. Breaking the cycle of a negative attitude may not be easy, but once you do, you'll be far less inclined to get back into the cycle. That's why small steps and small accomplishments are so important in pursuing a macro goal. You may look at a map for becoming a neurologist and say, I'll never get through all those math courses. But if you get 1 A in algebra, you'll realize that you can. Another way of expressing this is that success in learning begets more success. Once you have successfully learned a subject or skill, it bolsters your confidence in your ability to learn other skills. Your past, in which you may have been labeled or labeled yourself as a non-learner, is precisely that, your past. It is not your present. It has little relation to what you are capable of accomplishing now. What has happened to many of us is that we have been conditioned into a negative feedback loop where learning is concerned. The step-by-step accumulation of new skills is the way to break this loop and replace it with a much more positive cycle. Which brings us to the third step in the learning process, the attitude and value that learning takes time and patience. Most of us, at the time we are exposed to our greatest concentration of education, haven't developed the necessary self-discipline skills to be able to take advantage of it. And why should we? We were only children. Excellence, as we've been learning in this neuropsychology of self-discipline program, is based on seasoned learning. Skills like medicine, mathematics, chemistry, dance, law, music, pottery, writing, languages, architecture, masonry, carpentry, the list is endless. All require seasoning, the accumulation of knowledge over time. The perseverance to stick with a task over a long period of time, sometimes decades. The ability to find pleasure in the accomplishment of steps toward a goal, rather than seeking the instantly gratifying quick fix. All these are the hallmarks of the self-disciplined. A wise philosopher, in speaking of the seasoning of a learner, once said, "There are very few human beings who receive knowledge complete and staggering by instant illumination. Most of us acquire it fragment by fragment, on a small scale, by successive developments, cellularly, like a laborious mosaic." One other myth about the acquisition of knowledge has it that you can get too old to learn. This bit of fallacious thinking has been handed down in the aphorism that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. It's worth laying to rest. A classic incident from the life of the great poet Longfellow illustrates the relationship between age and learning. Told by Howard R. Driggs, the story goes, it happened that while the poet, at over 80 years of age, was still teaching at Harvard, one of his appreciative students asked him, "How do you keep so perennially young, Professor Longfellow?" We never get tired of your classes. You always have something new and interesting to give." "I've never had that question put to me before," returned the poet. Then, looking out of the window, he said, "You see those 2 apple trees in the yard? Do you observe any difference between the blossoms on the older tree and those on the younger one?" "No," replied the student. "They look just alike to me." "How do you account for the fact that the old apple tree flowers out as beautifully as does the young one?" persisted the teacher. "Let me tell you the secret. That old tree managed last year to grow enough wood to put forth its new blossoms. Blossoms, you know, always come on the new wood." "Oh, I see," said the young man. "To keep young, one must keep growing." "Yes," came the quiet response. Einstein, in his later years, was asked the secret of his ability to learn. His reply also illustrates the point and importance of lifelong learning. Einstein said, "The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. The more I realize I don't know, the more I want to learn." Age should be no barrier to the acquisition of new knowledge and skills. If you have the self-discipline to see your efforts through, you can learn anything at any age. Let's now discuss the 4th step in the learning process, a set of tried and proven principles that work together as a system to make learning easy. If you'll turn this cassette over now, we'll introduce you to a very simple yet powerful system to learn effectively at any age, whatever the subject area. A recent movie called Educating Rita beautifully illustrates the points we're going to discuss in the remainder of this session. This film is about a working-class Englishwoman who has a dream about becoming educated. The film tells the story of her personal odyssey as she pursues her vision, her dream, in the face of incredible obstacles. She faces at one point or another during the story conflicts with work, with transportation, with her parents, with schedules, with her mentor's desire and ability to teach, with the disdain of other more educated students, and with a husband who wants her to stay home and make babies, not thesis. Through it all, she perseveres, driven by the dream of herself as an educated woman, a woman who can discuss important issues, who can commune with the great thinkers and writers who make up such a rich part of her English heritage. She burns with the fire of her vision, a vision rich in dignity and strength. It's a vision she can hear, smell, taste, touch, and see. The actress, Julie Waters, expresses her character's struggle to change, to improve, to better herself, with such credibility that you can see the woman, Rita, change before your very eyes. There was nothing abstract about Rita's quest for education. Each book she read, each class she took, each time she met with her advisor or participated in a class discussion, was a visible step toward the completion of her goal. It was extraordinarily obvious how closely her vision and her process of learning were interconnected. Sometimes that connection is less obvious. So that's what the remainder of this session will speak to: how to recognize the connection between learning and the successful achievement of your goals. Learning is not simply the rote memorization of useless facts, or even useful facts. Of course, we're all aware that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But what does that have to do with our vision? The same lack of relationship to vision is often true with our attempts to understand abstract principles, as in mathematics, chemistry, or physics. They are very difficult to learn and use if we cannot see the direct applications to our everyday lives, to the pursuit of our purpose and vision. We ask ourselves, how is this going to help me in achieving my vision? Cybervision founder Steve DeVore recalls signing up for a course in statistics when he was attending graduate school. He hadn't taken the prerequisite higher math courses, but had gotten permission from the instructor to take the course anyway. DeVore's instructor, however, issued a dire warning at the beginning. Without those prerequisite courses, DeVore stood a good chance of failing. But forewarned is forearmed, and DeVore found a way to overcome his lack of preparation. The first week of class, he found himself swamped with mathematical concepts that were abstract and confusing. The only way I could make sense out of what was going on, he says, was to take each abstract principle and make it concrete. Instead of talking about X's, Y's, and Z's, I made them into apples and oranges, and I ended up with the second highest grade in the class. I find this concreteness also ties into vision, DeBoer continues. Whenever you have to learn something that seems beyond your grasp, remember your vision and why you have to learn it. Then it will seem real and vital, and you'll have an easier time dealing with it. Whatever you have to learn, no matter how abstract or detailed the information, if it's necessary for your vision, then you can embody that information with your vision. Then it becomes something real and vital. You can put a handle on it. You have a reference for it. You've been learning the importance of vision all throughout this program. The sensory-rich, detailed kind of vision you created in Session 6 and are continuing to create on a daily basis. Making those visions concrete, you'll recall, sometimes even involved putting clippings or photographs of a desired goal upon the wall. This kind of work to strengthen vision is also at the heart of learning. As I promised earlier, I'm about to introduce you to a powerfully effective, easy-to-learn method of learning that will carry you through the rest of your life. This four-part learning system is the application of certain principles that reveal themselves in the course of our research with self-disciplined achievers. Learning and applying these principles will enable you to approach any subject matter with confidence and thoroughly learn the material no matter how difficult it might be. We call this system mega learning. We use the word mega to connote power. The power to achieve you acquire through the acquisition and application of knowledge. Let me quickly preview each of the 4 steps and then look at the process in greater detail. First, recognize the need to learn a principle. Second, relate the principle to your personal vision or goal. Third, internalize the principle by relating it to your own experience. And fourth, apply the principle in action. Let's examine each of these 4 steps in turn. First, recognize your need to learn new information and skills. You cannot reach your goal without getting an education first. This doesn't necessarily mean attending school. It means identifying the key skills and competencies that you must master if you are successfully going to reach your goal. Ask yourself, will I achieve my goal without this knowledge or skill? If your answer is no, then you have a strong motivation for learning. Your learning is now crucial, for without it, your road to achievement is blocked. Learning is a lot easier if you have a specific reason to learn. Once you recognize that you have a need to learn, you've taken the first step toward achieving your goal. Step 2 is simply asking yourself, how can I use this? How will it help me fulfill my vision? Imagine yourself achieving your goal and using the new knowledge and skills you are about to learn. See how each skill and bit of knowledge applies directly to your future success, no matter how unrelated or trivial it might seem to be in the beginning. This process is akin to putting a jigsaw puzzle together. You have a picture of what you want to achieve on the jigsaw box. Inside the box are hundreds of related but unrelated pieces of the puzzle. You put 2 pieces together. You pick up a 3rd piece. You toy with it, mentally turning it over, looking at its edges, its contours, its unique characteristics, looking at the ways it might fit into the whole picture. Then comes the aha moment. You see exactly where the new piece of puzzle fits, how the contours of the piece are shaped to fit the pieces already in place. And as you place the piece in the puzzle, you get an idea of what the larger picture will look like. Perhaps you refer back to the picture on the jigsaw box, which is analogous to the mental picture you have of the goal for which you're striving. The very act of studying the information and putting it in its proper place helps you bring the picture on the box to life. The 3rd step in our learning process is internalizing the principle by relating it to your own experience. If you're learning about electrical waveforms and frequency, for example, think about the times you've thrown a pebble into a pond and seen ripples form on the water. The bigger the pebble and the harder you threw it, the bigger and faster the waves would be. In Newtonian physics, you can easily understand the law that states, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. by remembering how you stand up from a sitting position. Do you just shoot straight up, or do you have to first push your weight down on the chair to stand up? In order to stand up, you have to first push down. That's Newton's law in action. Every time you find an example from your own experience to illustrate a bit of knowledge you're trying to learn, you'll reinforce your understanding of that knowledge. And you'll remember it because it's anchored to something very personal. Every time you think of Newton's law, you'll picture yourself pushing off a chair to stand up. It works for just about any abstract theory you can think of. The fourth critical step in learning is the actual application of the principle you're trying to grasp. Throw pebbles in a pond and watch the action when you're learning waveform theory. Sit down and stand up over and over again until Newton's law is firmly planted in your mind. If you're studying a new language, use the new vocabulary you learn every single day. As you walk down the street or through your living room, try naming every object you see in your new language. Using these 4 steps to learning will make the experience easier, less frightening, and more fun. You'll make mistakes just as everybody does, but persistent application of the Mega Learning System will pay off in greater understanding, greater memory retention, and a better education overall in whatever it is you're trying to learn. The 4 steps to enhance learning we've outlined here are similar to and related to the 4 stages which make up the process of creativity. Our definition of creativity is taking the knowledge and skills you learn and applying it to the realization of your purpose, vision, and goals. To be creative, you have to be armed with knowledge and skills tempered by experience. The first stage in the creative process is preparation. Creative problem solvers consciously collect all the information they can, gathering tools which will help them solve a problem or get a job done. During this stage, if there's a problem to be solved, the person might be perplexed, but at the same time excited about the possibility of coming up with a solution. Stage 2 is called incubation. Once the research has been done and the necessary information has been collected, the creative person often releases the problem and turns to something else, including rest, relaxation, or physical activity related to the problem. During this stage, the knowledge begins to reform itself below the level of consciousness, shifting and realigning until it becomes a whole. During this stage, tantalizing flashes of insights and glimpses of parts of the final solution may emerge. Stage 3 is called illumination. This is the moment of discovery. It is the point in time where all you have learned and experienced has been distilled in your mind. The solution or inspiration springs forth almost miraculously. Miraculously, if you don't recognize how much preparation and groundwork you've already laid in stage 1. Often this stage is accompanied by an overwhelming feeling of certainty that says, yes, this is the piece of art I want to create. Or yes, this is the product idea I want to explore. Stage 4 is called verification or revision. This stage takes place again on a conscious level. The details of an experimental process, if you are a scientist, must be worked out. If you're an artist, you must decide whether this picture will be painted in watercolor or oil. This stage involves visible work and rational thinking. It involves drawing from your base of knowledge and fundamental skills to make your work conform to the vision of your creative insight. As you can tell, the knowledge and skills you acquire are the tools for the creative process. The parallels to the simple approach to learning we've outlined here and the process of creativity should also help put to rest the misconception that self-disciplined people are not creative. That discipline involves being married to lists and systems to the exclusion of freedom and creativity. On the contrary, creativity is the byproduct of a disciplined, well-informed mind, a mind that is using its storehouse of knowledge to solve problems and achieve goals. The more you learn, the more creative you can become. If your heart is set on becoming a professional musician, you can hardly be expected to know how to compose a symphony until you've become an expert in reading music and have studied music history. If you want to become a heart surgeon, You can't expect to pioneer new techniques in heart surgery until you've thoroughly mastered all the existing techniques. If you want to start a business, you must first study how other businesses are run, and then make your own decisions about how your company will work. If the realization of your vision requires the mastery of new knowledge and skills, I hope that learning will now be a stepping stone rather than a barrier to the creative realization of your goals. In our next and last session, you'll learn how to develop the twin pillars of the self-disciplined character, persistence and perseverance. And you'll be well equipped to begin your long and fruitful journey towards the goal you've chosen as your most important ambition. I'd like to begin this final session with two true stories that illustrate the value of persistence and perseverance in any of life's endeavors. The first story is about a mountain climber named Don Bennett. After successfully scaling 14,000-foot Mount Rainier, one of the highest mountains and most difficult climbs in the United States, Don Bennett was interviewed about the experience by a local reporter. "How did you do it?" the reporter wanted to know. "How did you keep going for 14,000 feet and not giving up?" Bennett thought for a moment before answering. Then he spoke slowly, trying to get the reporter to understand the mental process that led him to the peak of that mountain. "Starting months before the climb," Bennett said, "I created a vision of myself at the top of the mountain. That vision was so real that I could actually feel the cold wind blowing in my face, and I could see the spectacular mountains and valleys all around me. I saw and felt this vision 100 times a day. It inspired me. It motivated me. It kindled my determination to see the climb through to the end. During the climb itself," he continued, "I drew upon my vision for inspiration. When the going got tough, I saw myself at the top of that mountain just as clear as could be. And then finally, I reached my goal and my vision became a reality." The reporter was impatient with Bennett's explanation. Yeah, he said, "I've heard all that vision stuff before. But that doesn't explain how you did it. You're an amputee. How did a one-legged man climb a 14,000-foot mountain?" Don Bennett looked the reporter straight in the eye and said quietly, "One hop at a time. My vision became a reality, one hop at a time." Our second true story takes place during the last few weeks of World War II. Don McCall was a seaman on the Navy ship Indianapolis, which at the time was cruising the Philippine Sea. Suddenly, the ship was struck by Japanese torpedoes, and immediately it began to sink. McCall was asleep below decks when the first torpedo hit. He instinctively grabbed his life jacket and made his way up to the deck as the ship began to roll over. As he launched himself into the churning sea, the ship sank, taking 300 men with her. Another 900 or so had been pitched into the water. "I made up my mind that I was in big trouble," McCall told an interviewer, "and I also made up my mind that I would do whatever I had to do, no matter how painful, to survive." The first thing McCall did was to move away from the other survivors and float alone. He knew about the dangers of mass panic, especially if there was a shark attack, and he knew he'd stand a better chance if he stayed away from the other men. McCall also protected himself from exposure in the blistering sun by keeping a life jacket over his head. He kept a hose on his person so he could retreat underwater in case of a Japanese attack. And most important, he kept in mind the lesson he had learned about the danger of drinking seawater, no matter how thirsty he got. For days, McCall watched men succumbing to mass panic and hallucination. He watched them being torn apart by sharks, while he escaped attack by remaining perfectly still. He watched them drinking seawater and dying of dehydration, while he swallowed his own desire to drink. He watched them dying all around him, while he remained alive. 4 days later, a Navy patrol boat plucked an exhausted 90-pound McCall out of the sea. He had survived 4 days without food or drink in the blistering sun, in shark-infested waters. An incredible feat, and he had proved the power of self-discipline even in holding death at bay. Like mountain climber Don Bennett, McCall never lost sight of his vision, staying alive. He used all his knowledge and skill to make that vision come true. He resisted drinking seawater to get immediate gratification of his thirst, which would have killed him. and he found creative solutions to the problems of exposure to the sun and Japanese attack. Both Bennett and McCall used self-discipline to endure terrible physical hardship and achieve seemingly unachievable goals. Your own goal may not seem as urgent as theirs, but the principle of achieving it remains the same. Through vision, commitment, patience, and creative application of knowledge and skill, you can see your goal through to the end. But the ultimate key to your success is what this session is all about: persistence and perseverance. In this session, you're going to learn what persistence and perseverance are really all about. You'll be taught how to develop both of these critical qualities through the application of 5 simple principles. You'll find out how to turn problems and setbacks, even agonizing situations, into positive learning experiences that will actually bring you closer to the realization of your goal. And you'll understand the value of never giving up, no matter how tough the journey gets or how endless it seems. First, let's define the words persistence and perseverance. Is there a difference between the two? Yes, a subtle one. Persistence means never giving up. Perseverance means persisting in spite of hardships, opposition, and setbacks. Mountain climber Bennett and Navy seaman McCall displayed both persistence and perseverance in their heroic efforts to reach their goals. Bennett had to use his one leg to hop at least 30,000 times to get up to the top of Mount Rainier. McCall had to stay calm and follow a life-saving plan while spending 4 days in shark-infested waters without any food or drink. These men reached their goals because they had already developed the qualities of persistence and perseverance. Now you are going to learn how to develop these qualities too. There are 5 crucial steps involved in learning how to develop into the kind of self-disciplined achiever who never quits and never loses sight of his or her goal. Listen carefully while I outline each one. The first step is to rekindle and refuel your vision and purpose every single day. Remind yourself daily of the rewards and benefits that await you when you successfully realize your goal. The emotion you draw from these constant reminders of why you're working so hard and giving up so many things will sustain your powers of persistence and perseverance. The second step is to firmly anchor the following attitude deep within your heart and mind. I can achieve anything I set my mind to. Nothing is impossible for me to achieve if I want it badly enough and am willing to pay the price for it. No matter how much hard work it takes, no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult it is, I can and will achieve my goal. I will never forget that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Step 3. Realize that obstacles are going to arise and setbacks are going to occur. Keep in mind that these difficulties are really opportunities to learn. Every obstacle that you overcome, every setback you bounce back from, strengthens your character and makes you smarter and stronger. Whatever you do, don't try to hide from or ignore problems. They never go away by themselves. Meeting challenges squarely and solving problems creatively is at the heart of self-discipline and at the heart of achievement. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. When your progress seems blocked, it means that it's time to increase your knowledge and look for creative solutions. This is the 4th step in developing persistence and perseverance. You may be doing the wrong things for the right reasons, and now is the time to find out. Start experimenting with taking different paths to your destination. But whatever you do, don't quit. Most people quit when things don't work out as they planned, or when they realize how much hard work they're going to have to do. Remember, a failure is someone who has not learned from his mistakes. Step 5. Turn your work into fun. Make what you have to do into something you want to do. Working towards a lifelong goal shouldn't feel like a sacrifice, because that goal is what you want more than anything in the world. If you follow these 5 steps faithfully, your long road to success will turn into an exciting journey of knowledge, discovery, challenge, and reward. And for as long as you feel you're making progress, even hard work and minor interferences won't shake you from your purpose. The real problem arises when a major setback occurs, especially if it's unforeseen, A seemingly insurmountable obstacle is often enough to make even the most determined achiever decide that the fight simply isn't worth it. Setbacks make people give up just at the point when they should not. How can you deal successfully with setbacks? How can you learn not to feel like a failure when it suddenly seems that all of your hard work may have been for nothing? There are 5 ways you can turn every setback you encounter into a learning experience, one that will leave you stronger and wiser and more determined than ever to keep working toward your goal. Listen carefully while I outline each one in turn. First, never try to ignore a problem or handicap. Deal with your problems directly. Don't avoid them or try to hide from them. If you want to start a business but can't find people to back you up financially, that doesn't give you the right to plunge into your project with no capital and a lot of ideas for spending money. If you want to become a doctor but don't have the grades to get into medical school, it won't help you to start applying to schools you know you can't get into. When you have a problem, study it from all angles and try to determine the best way to proceed. Which brings us to our second point. Don't blame other people for your setbacks, and don't chalk it up to bad luck. You make your own luck in this life, and you have to solve your own problems. Learn to tackle them head on, being as realistic as possible and as level-headed as possible. Mentors can often provide a great deal of help in a bad situation. Try acting as if you are your own mentor. What would he or she do in your situation? Or what has he or she already done to overcome an obstacle similar to yours? Third, continually strive to strengthen your qualities of self-discipline. Setbacks often occur because of weaknesses in certain areas. Try to turn those weaknesses into strengths. Be your own severest critic, but not your own worst enemy. Don't tell yourself, I failed. Tell yourself, I slipped, but I'm going to pick myself up and go on. Fourth, in almost every setback, there's a seed of opportunity, a silver lining, if you will. Find it and use it. You may find yourself taking a slightly different path to achieving your goal than you first imagined, but you'll get there just the same. Take the new path and see where it leads you. Following this philosophy helps take the emotional sting out of setbacks and is a good antidote for discouragement, and it's a healthier way to react to a bad situation than deciding to give up. Fifth, always remember that no matter how difficult a problem is, or how insurmountable it seems, there's always a solution. A problem is only really a problem if you think you can't solve it. If you take the attitude that every problem has a solution, and you approach your problem with an open and creative mind, you'll find that solution. A young woman we know named Carol Napier was faced with and managed to overcome the kind of setbacks that might make anybody want to give up. Her story is so inspiring that we'd like to end this session with her example of what it's like to be a self-disciplined achiever who never quits no matter what. At 26, Carol had a degree in marketing and a good job as a marketing assistant, with an eye to moving up in the company she worked for as soon as there was an opening for a higher position. Carol had diabetes, diagnosed when she was 12, but had always been able to keep it under control with insulin shots, and had always lived a perfectly normal, relatively healthy life. In the spring of Carol's 26th year, she began having trouble with her eyes. Doctors told her that her diabetes was causing her to slowly lose her eyesight. At first, Carol refused to believe it, but when she began having trouble driving, she realized the doctors were right, and she would have to re-evaluate her job and her purpose in life to deal with the problem of approaching blindness. But before Carol could come up with a solution to that problem, her kidneys also began to fail. Ultimately, she needed a kidney transplant, which was done successfully when she turned 27. Everything seemed to be going fine when a sudden episode of insulin shock left Carol paralyzed from the waist down. Carol recalls wanting to quit then and there. At that point, I just wanted to go to sleep and never wake up. The depression got so bad that I realized I couldn't go on this way. I only had one choice, and that was to get myself out of this. Slowly, Carol regained her strength, learning to walk again with the aid of physical therapy. She rewarded herself for her progress by making a trip across the country alone to visit her parents for Thanksgiving, A trip friends tried to dissuade her from taking, but which proved to Carol that she could still make it on her own. Today, Carol is attending college, studying for a master's degree in rehabilitative education. She has decided to spend the rest of her life helping people face and overcome problems like hers. She is completely blind and still walks with a cane, but that has not stopped her from pursuing a goal many healthy people would find difficult to achieve. The key to reaching any goal is to develop the strength of character that makes you refuse to give up, no matter how bad things look. The most amazing thing about persistence and perseverance is that they make it almost impossible for you not to succeed in your endeavors. In this session, you've learned the importance of not being a quitter, of learning from your mistakes, and of keeping an open mind when it comes to finding creative solutions to problems you may think are unsolvable. In the next session, we're going to review everything you've learned in the Neuropsychology of Self-Discipline program and give you some tips for developing the lifelong habit of self-discipline. We're now coming to the end of the Neuropsychology of Self-Discipline, and now is a good time to reflect on what you've learned and how far you've come. It's also a good time to start thinking about how you're going to maintain and develop your self-disciplined character for the rest of your life, because the process of becoming an achiever never really ends. In the years to come, you'll find yourself learning from trial and error, from accomplishments, from setbacks, from disappointments, from rewards, from the feeling of satisfaction you get when a job has been well done. The more you achieve, the more you'll learn one of the greatest secrets of achievement. Success breeds success. Every small step you take on the road to your goal will make it easier to take the next step. And once you've achieved your goal, you'll probably find that there's another goal you want to achieve. Along the way, you'll delight in the process of watching yourself in action, making corrections in your methods and strategies as you strive toward your ultimate goal and the hundreds of smaller goals you will successfully reach on the way. Let's talk about the milestones you've already passed. In Session 1, which you listened to some time ago, you uncovered the master key to your highest potential, self-discipline. We define self-discipline as the ability to work systematically and progressively toward a goal, to become positively obsessed with that goal, and to let that obsession lead you to accomplishment. We talked about the problems caused by lack of self-discipline. We learned about the waste of potential, the drifting from job to job, from relationship to relationship, of the person who has no real sense of purpose and an undisciplined approach to life in general. We also talked about the problems of wanting immediate gratification and how that always leads to failure because it means refusing to pay for success with hard work. There is no other way to be successful except through hard work. The words pay for shouldn't bother you. All accomplishments come with a price tag, just like something you might want to buy. And just as you will save for an item you really want to buy, cutting your budget and making financial sacrifices, you should also be willing to make sacrifices in order to reach your goal. You may have to give up time, recreational activities, other priorities in your life. But it won't be difficult to do, because reaching your goal will become a more important source of pleasure. In Session 2, you were introduced to the 10 characteristics of the self-disciplined achiever. These characteristics served as a model against which you could compare your own strengths and weaknesses. Let's review them quickly now, to refresh your memory and see how far you've come in absorbing the principles of this program. First, self-disciplined achievers have a strong sense of purpose. They have a cause or direction to which they have chosen to dedicate their lives. This cause gives them meaning in their lives and a reason to exist. Second, the self-disciplined seek out positive role models, called mentors, to teach them how to best approach their goal and overcome setbacks and obstacles along the way. Third, self-disciplined achievers use sensory images to provoke the kind of emotion that keeps them working toward their goal for as long as it takes to achieve it. Fourth, those possessing an iron will dwell on the fulfillment of their vision rather than on fear and failure. They have a positive attitude toward themselves and their goal and refuse to let setbacks get them down. Fifth, the self-disciplined achiever has a deep-rooted belief in his or her ability to achieve. This "I know I can do it" attitude is nurtured by their study of mentors and their realization that the only thing that stands between themselves and their goals is hard work and self-discipline. Sixth, self-disciplined achievers have the ability to plan and organize. They know that a goal can never successfully be reached in a haphazard way. They understand that they must map out a blueprint for success if they are ever to realize their highest ambitions. Seventh, they know how and when to acquire the essential knowledge and skills they need to achieve their goals. This comes from the planning and organization work they did earlier. Eighth, self-disciplined achievers have patience. They understand the concept of seasoning and its importance in reaching any goal. Time does not frighten them. Ninth, people who achieve their goals do so through persistence and perseverance. They are stubborn in their efforts to achieve, and they never give up. 10th, self-disciplined achievers have a mature attitude toward pleasure. Rather than seeking any diversion that will temporarily make them feel better, they take the most pleasure in doing the work that will help them achieve their goal. How many of these 10 characteristics did you remember? We suggest you play Session 2 over and over again until you can recall every one of them without prompting. Making these qualities a part of your own personality is what acquiring self-discipline is all about. And the more you listen to them, the more you think about them, the more they will become a part of your own life. In Session 3, we delved deeply into the scientific basis for this program. You learned how the key to success is developing the kind of constant internal motivation that keeps you on course through problems and setbacks, through temporary boredom or fatigue, through periods of doubt or discouragement. And you found out why other motivational programs fail to give you the sustenance you need to pursue your goal for weeks, months, or years. You learned about Dr. Carl Pribram's research into images of achievement and the critical role they play in motivating people to be successful. Dr. Pribram's discovery of the power of sensory-rich images to provoke the drive of motivation made the creation of this unique program possible. In Session 4, we discussed the power of purpose. Here you learn to focus your energy like a laser beam on what you want to accomplish. You learned how your macro or major purpose really could be broken down into a series of micro or minor achievements. You heard examples of how well-known achievers tackled major goals by turning them into step-by-step plans for success that they could deal with one at a time. In the same session, you participated in a fascinating exercise that lets you pinpoint, perhaps for the first time, what your most important goal in life really is. You then used that goal to create a statement of purpose that would stand as a beacon in your quest for achievement. In Session 5, we talked about mentors and role models. You learned about the process of modeling, the basis for human learning. We talked about how models are both a blueprint and an inspiration for our own activity and our own growth. You learned how models help shorten the trial and error process we must all go through before chalking up an accomplishment. You also learned how to choose a role model and how to turn that model into an inspirational but not awe-inspiring figure. You learned the value of realizing that your role model has faults and weaknesses just as you do, but has succeeded in spite of them. In Session 6, you learned how to translate your purpose into sensory images that would fuel your inner fire of determination and ambition. And you learned how to daily reinforce your mental images of achievement, to make them a permanent part of your body and mind. In Session 7, you were introduced to visual network planning. This planning system applies to any endeavor from making a movie to making a run for the presidency. The system works by breaking down what you want to accomplish into logical building blocks. It helps you keep track of your achievements over a long period of time and is a reward in itself for work well done. In the same session, you learned to become a storyteller. The story was that of your own success. You used your rich powers of imagination and your best verbal skills to detail the steps you took to accomplish your most important goals. In Session 8, you learned about the self-disciplined achiever's attitude toward time. You learned how achievers value patience, how they oppose the kind of quick-fix mentality that leads to general dissatisfaction with life, and how they use single-minded hard work to experience time quickening, a sensation that time is passing much more rapidly than it really is. You also learned about the problem of procrastination, its psychological causes, and the ways in which you can overcome it. You learned why it is considered the single most important cause of failure, and why it's so important for you to develop a do-it-now attitude before you try to do anything else. In Session 9, you learned how to plan to acquire the knowledge and skills you need in order to achieve your goals. You were introduced to the concept of mega-learning, a powerful 4-step system that enables you to master any subject, no matter how difficult or complex. You also learned how knowledge is the building block of creativity. You were introduced to a 4-step process that lets you creatively channel your knowledge toward the kind of action that will help you achieve your goals. And you learned that your belief in your ability to learn is 90% of the learning process. Finally, in Session 10, you learned how to develop the powers of persistence and perseverance, the critical characteristics that will see you through to the successful completion of your vision and purpose, no matter how long it takes or how difficult it is. You heard several inspiring stories about people who persevered and achieved their goals through extreme hardship and even physical danger. And now, as we come to the conclusion of this program, I'd like to point out that acquiring self-discipline is a never-ending process. There won't come a day when you wake up in the morning and say, "Yes, I'm finally self-disciplined now. There's nothing more I need to do to develop strength of character and determination of will." Self-discipline requires a lifetime of commitment. This doesn't mean you won't develop the habits of self-discipline in a relatively short period of time. It simply means that you must always be vigilant about how you are approaching your goals and what your purpose in life really is. It's all too easy to get sidetracked in something that feels comfortable, but is not what you really set out to achieve. Every small victory will become a cause for celebration, and a chance to renew your faith in your own ability to achieve whatever it is you want in life. And as you achieve it, you will find yourself becoming the kind of person you've always admired, the kind of person who could pursue a goal so single-mindedly, so stubbornly, and so patiently that he or she could not help but achieve it. I'm Richard Gebhardt. Thank you for joining me in this Cybervision program.
This is released for the sake of education. This is a brief key insight about all the concepts of the book. We provide free audio books, key insights, summaries, and brief study notes on the concepts of the books. So make sure to subscribe and become a part of our family.